Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Jade Scott. This is GrowthRx, and today we are joined on GRX Live today by Gerda Muller. Hi Gerda, all the way from the Gold Coast in Australia.
Yes, hello. Excited to be here.
Now, you are a clinical psychologist who owns multiple practices up in Northern Australia, but you're also a business mentor, you're a published author. How does a clinical psychologist start to step away and specialize in business? Because that's what we're going to be talking about with you today.
Yeah, interesting question, because if you asked me 6 years ago whether I would ever do something like this, it would have been a resounding no ways. Hell no, that's not happening. But it started like 6 years ago, or five years ago. So my practices was running fairly well. And, I was happy with how everything was. And I thought, okay, well, got some extra time on my hand. What will I do with myself? So I made this crazy decision to start a PhD, right? But I enrolled part-time, knowing that obviously I've got 3 kids and I still have my businesses and everything. And of course, we'll have visitors the moment we start live. And I thought, okay, what can I do? I'm going to do the PhD, but I'm going to do it part-time so that I still have time to work on the practice and still be with the family. But I knew that in order for me to stay motivated, it had to be something of real interest to me. And it was really hard for many years prior, running the business, learning the ropes and not knowing what I'm doing, whether it was actually the right stuff. You were just learning by trial and error, basically. So I decided my topic was going to be psychologists as business owners, looking at current challenges, coping, and success predictors. So that was the PhD title. Started the whole literature review, getting stuck into all the research and the articles. And the more I looked, I was just dumbfounded by the lack of training and support for clinicians that becomes business owners. You study 6 years to be a psychologist, you learn everything you can about looking after your clients and changing lives, but you learn zero most of the times about running a business. And I just thought, yeah, that explains it. That explains all the tears, the long nights, the long hours, the pulling my hair out, making all the mistakes in the book. So I thought, maybe I should write a book about it, or maybe once my PhD is published. And then I thought, well, that's like 6 years away. That's how long a part-time PhD takes. And then I just thought, I'll just start telling people what I've learned from my own experience, right? And if it can help them, it will help them. And that's how I put my first workshop together. And I guess the rest, as they say, is history. It just like blossomed from there. I didn't put much planning into it. I just wanted to run a one-day workshop, just telling people what I've learned. And that was the plan. And I ended up having to refer my PhD. Still haven't completed it, because obviously I got too busy doing what is now called Private Practice Success Australia.
Wow. Well, congratulations on your journey and your success. You're very renowned in that space, particularly not only amongst psychology business owners, but obviously there's a lot of people watching now, watching afterwards, who are osteopaths, physios, chiropractors. And you're absolutely right. We don't get, I used to teach a subject at university, which is integration to business at Victoria University. Now that was about 8 years ago when I left the university, and that subject was never continued. And it was really sad, because we come out technically brilliant, well, with a lot of improvement to go, but flailing a little bit on the business side of things. So we are seeing a lot of business coaches and mentors stepping across into this space, because it is very, very needed. And so I guess that's why your thought leadership in this area is one of the things why I wanted to talk to you when I came up with the topic talking business, which is very, very broad, and we had to narrow it down offline a little bit. But in true leadership style, I do like to ask all my guests, what does leadership mean to you?
I don't have a big, bold definition about it. For me, it's just very simple, and it's really my tagline and my little mantra in everything that I do in life. And that is just to help people live the life they deserve, right? That's what drives my leadership. That's what drives me to help other people to become leaders in their space, because, you know, you've just got one life to live and you want to make it count. And to me, it's as simple as that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Mm.
Now, we have the privilege of you having put together some slides for us, so we're very grateful for that. So I'm going to hand over to you now and let you share your screen and deliver your golden nuggets to all of us, and I'll join you back with some questions at the end. Thanks, Gerda.
Perfect. I will do that. And let's pop that on. Alrighty, so thank you for the introduction, Jade. I don't have to introduce myself, but I will introduce the topic that I want to talk about today, and that is, you know, the high achiever versus high performer mode, which is all about helping people move from the chief operating officer space within their practice into a chief executive officer space. And I know that sounds like very corporate terms and, you know, we're just small business, but it is the mindset of a CEO that I want to talk about. But the question, I guess, that we need to start with is, why is this relevant to you as a private practice owner, right? Why is the high achiever and high performer mode of importance? And when I think about the conversations that I have with private practice owners on a very regular basis, whether that's in my Facebook group, people just reaching out over email or messenger, or even in consults and stuff that I do, and I would be interested to know if you guys can relate to this. But the biggest challenges that I hear from practice owners, interestingly, irrespective of their level of private practice development, so if they're just starting out in private practice, or even if they've got huge practices, I normally hear that they're very time poor. It's like, I've got no time. I'm so busy. I've got all this stuff that I need to do. And of course, that we know that when you're time poor, it leads to overwhelm and all those type of uncomfortable feelings, stress, anxiety, all of that stuff. The other challenge that a lot of practice owners tell me they have, especially when they start to grow their practice, is letting go of control. Like, I've worked really hard to build up this baby of mine, which is my business, it's my reputation. I want to make sure that it continues and that we maintain our level of service provision when I start taking on clinicians and even administrative staff. So there's that fear of letting go of control. And of course, we know that that's a vicious cycle, because if you're going to micromanage, if you're not going to delegate, you're going to continue to stay time poor. So that's the challenge and the issue that people come to me with very often. And I think a lot of times the go-to or the default space that we go into is, how do I fix this? Is it time management or time mastery skills? Do I need to look at better strategies to do my diary and how I set things up and the structure? And although all those things is amazing, and I do a lot of that with my clients, and I use a lot of those type of time mastery strategies myself, I honestly think and I believe that before you can implement those things successfully, in order to claw back your time and be able to step out of that narrative of I've got no time, and to be able to get to that point where you are comfortable to start delegating and trusting other people with this baby that you've raised, which is your private practice, it's a mindset thing. It's a way of being, and to me, really becoming aware of the mode that you are operating in on a day-to-day business when you're walking into the practice is the thing that needs to change first before you can effectively start to implement all the time management strategies that we know is out there and available to us, right? So what I want us to do today, and that's why I've got these slides, is I want you to really self-assess. And I'm going to take you through a couple of prompts, and I want you to tell me whether you think you are a high achiever naturally, or whether you are naturally a high performer. Like, which are you, right? Because we tend to be normally one or the other. Just like you are either naturally by default more introverted versus extroverted. And just like introversion and extroversion, you can be one or the other at times, depending on the situation. But you're going to have a default way of being. And again, it doesn't mean the one is better than the other. We love introverts and extroverts equally, right? And both the high achiever and high performer mode serves us at different stages of our lives. So you want to really assess, what are you right now, and whether your current mode of operating is that amenable to a CEO, or you may be still stuck in COO mode. All right, so let's go through some of the prompts that I have here for you. So let's start with the high achiever. So I'm just going alphabetically. A is before P for performer. So what does it mean to be a high achiever? So high achievers feel like they are constantly pushing through your own emotional and physical limits to get stuff done. So if you feel like I constantly have to push, and what I should say before we get into it, actually, just to preface this, that I didn't come up with these terms. This is actually organizational psychology research and evidence, okay? So just saying that so you know we can trust all of this. Okay, so question one, do you feel you're constantly pushing through your own emotional and physical limits to get stuff done? Yes or no? High achiever, do you like to get your to-do list done today? Like, I need to get through it today, you know, that pressure you put on yourselves? Another question, do you look for the winning solution when you are problem solving? Yes or no? Do you experience a lot of self-doubt as you go through your day, as you're making decisions, as you're implementing things? And are you high on self-competitiveness, i.e. constantly want to do better? Okay. So some more on high achiever. A high achiever is never satisfied with your wins. So does it feel to you like you're always moving the goalposts for yourself? Okay, that's a high achiever trait. When you're a high achiever, your effort comes from a not good enough energy and needing to prove yourself. So as you can see, I am starting you to be really I'm asking you to be really self-reflective here. And if you are really honest, this is going to be really helpful to you. As a high achiever, you are driven by a fear of failure. So if you don't like failing and you're driven by that fear, you're probably a high achiever. High achievers also get easily stuck in perfectionism. Okay, is that you perhaps? And you're a bit of a control freak. Okay, so that is our high achiever. So just need to ask yourself, you know, is this me? Am I going, yep, that's me. I like tick most of those freaking boxes. Okay, so all we are doing now is just assessing, am I a high achiever? Yes or no? And I would also encourage you to reflect a bit on how your high achiever might have served you, right? Over the years. Has it been serving you, or has it been making things hard for you? And we'll come back to this. All right, so let's move now into the space of the high performer. So again, you now want to self-assess. You want to ask yourself, do I tick these boxes? You know, am I a high performer? Because you generally one or the other in a situation. Like I said, it is a continuum, it is a scale, but you want to identify your default. So a high performer, if you are this person, you are able to leave dealing with problems until the next day. So for example, if something happened and you have that inner push to get this done today, I need to fix this today, then you're probably a high achiever. If you're able to go, all right, it's happened, I'm just going to park it there and I'm going to deal with this tomorrow, let things cool down, think about it, then you're probably more a high performer. Okay. If you're a high performer, you are always looking for the optimal solution. So you'll remember being a high achiever looks for a winning solution, you know, that self-competitiveness that they are high on, whereas a high performer looks for the optimal solution. As a high performer, you are also better able to keep self-doubt at bay. You might notice it, but you are much better at not letting it impact your decisions and your behaviors. As a high performer, you are low on self-competitiveness versus the high achiever that's really high on this marker. And high performers, you are meticulous around your habits and your routines. Like every morning starts in exactly the same way. You do certain things when you walk into the practice. Your diary probably reflects all of these habits and routines. So you need to ask yourself, yes or no, is this me? Still with a high performer, for you, everything you do has a purpose. Okay? Remember, our high achiever, they want to tick those freaking things off the list. The high performer goes, what purpose does this serve? This thing that I need to do right now. As a high performer, you are also good at pressing pause on triggers. Okay, that's one that I need to constantly work on myself, right? So when you are triggered by something, are you good at going, deep breath, I'm not going to react to that, I'll deal with that later. High performers are also fiercely protective of their time. So how protective are you of your time? Are you constantly booking in clients when you already have a fully booked day in your schedule? You know, maybe you've booked out some self-care time or time off and something happens and you're the first one to go, no, I'll just come in and work that day. You know, how protective are you of your time? High performers also has filters and rules around how they make decisions. In other words, they're probably a bit less likely to make emotional decisions. They've got like filters, they've got steps. If they need to make a decision, they'll go through those steps in order to come to the logical and fair decision at the end. And high performers, they take a long-term focus in the things that they do. Okay. So again, you want to ask yourself, is this you? Are you a high performer, for example? And if you are a high performer, how is being a high performer serving you? Okay. So if we come back to high achiever versus high performer, it is my personal belief that I think very often a lot of us are stuck in high achiever mode, okay? A lot of us are stuck in high achiever mode. And I totally understand why, because if you think about it, in order for us to get through 3, 4, 5, 6, however many years of university, you had to be a high achiever. You had to get stuff done in order to get through your assignments, get through everything you had to do for university. Our high achiever also serves us extremely well during that stage of setting up your practice. It serves you extremely well in those first 6 to 12 months where you're just doing everything and you're hustling and you're working and you're just getting shit done basically, right? But there comes a point in time that if you want to scale your practice, if you want to grow it, if you want to expand so that you can help more people, you need to take on admin team, you need to take on clinicians. And if you are going to remain stuck in a high achiever mode, the one doing all the doing all the worrying, you know, doing all the implementing, you will not be able to build that business. In fact, there's probably a really great likelihood that you will burn out if you keep staying in high achiever mode. Whereas, and that is what I would refer to as the COO mode, the Chief Operating Officer, the one that's in operations, making sure everything is happening on the ground, right? Where when you step into high performer mode, it doesn't mean you're sitting there twiddling your thumbs and not doing anything, but it really allows you to step into that space of the CEO that you go, okay, this is the stuff that needs to be done. This is our vision. This is our goals. Who's doing what? Are they empowered to do what they need to do? Do they have context? Do they have the resources to implement those things? And it's very much a purpose-based thinking style. There's not that pressure on it. That's why they can pause triggers. It's why they can wait to deal with a crisis tomorrow, right? Because that's the mode that they're coming from, that they need to ensure that they are in high performance mode and they need to extract high performance from their high achievers by utilizing the high achievers that are now part of their business. And as your team grows and you start to develop your organizational structure, you also start to promote people into positions of high performers. And those are the people that will step into leadership positions within your practice as well. And again, the success with which those team members, for example, can move from high achiever to high performer will really determine how successful they are at doing the work that you have now hired or promoted them to do. So that is the gist of it. I try to keep it really, really concise. I'm going to maybe stop sharing here and then we can just have a conversation.
That's wonderful. I've been scribbling away behind the scenes here. What a great reflective exercise, firstly. I think everyone can sit back, particularly business owners, but not even. I mean, there's so many practitioners, and I'm thinking about some of the team at Western Region Health who I know are high performers, and they're 23 years old. They're straight out of uni. They're hustle and grind, ready to hit the ground running. And I remember that being me. And exactly as you said, what has this served for you so far? Being a high achiever has been very poignant in my success. And I guess I can reflect on that person who may or may not exist anymore because I'm older and I have children and my priorities are changing. But I was that person that everyone said would burn out back then. But I think a lot of it runs off adrenaline and stupidity, whichever one sort of comes first. And then, and then I think you get better at things with experience. And I think experience does make you a high level operator after a while because you get to make better decisions faster. And so I love where this is going. And I think that it's a great analysis when you kind of sit down with a business owner for the first time or somebody who's potentially looking to open their own business. But the great takeaway from this is that neither is better. It's situational. Did I get that right? You kind of need to draw on the best one that is needed in the situation that is at hand.
Yes, most definitely. Like we were having a conversation just beforehand, and let's say if you have a very high level person in your practice, like let's say I've got a practice principal that runs my practice, right? So I live 6.5 hours away from Brisbane. Chelsea is here in Brizzy. She runs both the practices. Let's say if Chelsea had to resign tomorrow and leave, I would probably need to step into high achiever mode in her role to make things happen, to get us through it, to get things back on track and do all the recruitment and stuff like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So for me being in high performer mode as the practice owner, I would have to change that. And without changing it, I wouldn't be able to manage that situation really well, depending on circumstances, how much notice she gives, all that type of stuff comes into it. But so it's about knowing when does the specific mode serve you, and also knowing when you are stuck in the one and when you need to make that shift. And that's where the awareness of the terms high achiever and high performer is really valuable, because I think when I am stuck or when I'm feeling really overwhelmed, that's when I will ask myself, am I currently being a high achiever or a high performer? I like both of them, so I don't mind either way, but sometimes they keep me stuck, right? And then I need to ask myself, okay, that's because I'm stuck in this mode. I need to shift out of it. I need to step into this other mindset of, okay, I'm not going to have the time or the energy or the space to do all the work. How do I still make this happen? How do I ensure that I delegate properly and get and empower other people to help with this situation? And the other thing, what I do often find with practice owners and with clinicians is that because our high achiever mode serves us so well, even when you do well at school, when you do well and get through university, when you get that first job and you're working really hard to excel, and when you just start building your practice, it's really hard to give that one up. And it's really hard to make that shift for the very first time, that letting go of the high achiever, because it's been like brilliant. It's allowed me to achieve and do all these things. And now I need to make that shift. But I think once you can make that for the very first time, it becomes easier to just move between the two of those.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the questions I get asked often behind the scenes is, when do I put on a practice manager in my business? And my response is always yesterday. Put on a practice manager yesterday. And a good practice manager will pay for themselves. They'll not only be part of the engine room and they can take over that achiever operation side of things, but they're a great sense of support, because being a business owner can get really lonely. And the reason why it's been lonely for me in the past, when I look back and reflect, is that decision fatigue, constantly having that responsibility fall on you, which I know we discussed last week with Dean Muller, talking about burnout and those sorts of things. But I think the great thing that you kind of summarized with the high performer is that rather than this fix it winning mode, they're in this optimal solution. And so I think one of the good things that I learned potentially in my transition across to a high performer, even though I very much slip back and forth between the two, is the ability to delegate and to outsource. And I think that control holds our businesses back very often, because we've got a certain pool of money, we don't know where to spend it, what do we spend it on to help facilitate growth? And often, more than anything, those high performers are the kings and queens of delegation. They understand that more people in the mix helps with better results and better outcomes, and being able to carry the weight rather than one person. Do you find that in your experience is, and I know that you're trying to stay really subjective here, do you want to guide your clients across to high performance mode, now that I'm allowed to ask questions and we say that one or the other isn't better? But do we want to find that high performer part of ourselves, because we want to, more than anything, what I picked up on is we want to value our time.
Well, I prefer high performance mode, because it allows me to do more of what I'm really good at, right? And again, 10 years ago, if you told me that I would not be doing any one-on-one clinical work, I would have told you never, ever will that happen, right? Because I was so determined to help people. But I've come to learn that in order to help more people, I need to scale what I'm doing. It's why I started a group practice. It's why I went to 2 sites. It's why I started Source Health. It's why I do coaching, because now I can empower practice owners to help more people, right? So being able to step into a high performer has allowed me to scale my impact, which is so important for me, which is part of my vision that I have, not only for my business, but my vision for business and life is very similar and it's very aligned. So it just allows me to do more of what I'm good at, and what I'm good at has changed significantly over time in terms of the space that I have landed in. And it might change again in a couple of years' time, because we all grow and evolve. So, and I'm sure you've heard people talk about being in your genius zone and doing your genius zone tasks that you are really good with. And I'm a full believer in that as well, knowing what is that stuff. In other words, I'm best suited to do this part for the business. And once you let other people actually step up and do the things, you'll be blown out of the water. It's like thinking, oh my goodness, they are actually better at this than I am. How could I have thought that nobody else can do this as well as I can? And that's not a narcissistic or ego thought that we have. It's just because we've been doing it for so long. We've been the one doing this task. And then you think, I'm the only one that can do it, when actually, no, there's probably lots of other people that can do it so much better than you.
Yeah. And I think that, look, there's a lot of business owners that are sitting there and they do want more time and they do have limited money. But let's just say there's a surplus of $20,000 and they're bringing that in. And if they stop practicing for 1.5 days a week, they're going to lose that revenue. And then they're also going to have to pay somebody else. People get a little bit frazzled with numbers, because at the end of the day, cash flow is so important. But if you stepped away for a day and invested your time into something else that could turn that 20 into 40, and yes, you probably have to pay somebody 20, you're still 20 better off. I guess it's about navigate. What do you say to those people who are looking for that next step and who are struggling with the how. And I know you've got a whole day course that helps facilitate this, but where do most people get stuck on is my question with letting go?
I think there's a lot of fear-based thinking happening. People are just scared. They're scared of making a decision and being disappointed, scared of hiring somebody and it doesn't work out. There's so, and I mean, I'm speaking specifically about my community that I often work with. There's a lot of scarcity thinking as well, but a lot of fear. And I think it's a lot of fear of failure, which is a high achiever mode trait. But I guess, you know, we all have a sense of failure. We don't like to fail. You know, yes, it's a lesson and all that type of stuff. But and it's hard, you know, how do you deal with fear of failure without going into therapy? I just go, you just need to decide, right? You just need to decide, am I doing this? Yes or no? Am I willing to wait? Yes or no, right? Do I want to achieve this vision that I have? Yes or no? It's a pure decision in my books. And if I've decided that, yes, this is what I want to do, it doesn't matter how scared I am, then I just need to act accordingly and start acting like that person that's already been there, done that. And it's not a fake it till you make it type of way of acting, but it's really, again, stepping into that space of going, actually, you know, I'm going to trust. And it's very, I guess, a lot of faith, but I truly believe that you need to trust in yourself that you can do it. And I guess people often look at me and go, you know, you take a lot of risks, you know, with the things that you do, Gerda. But the way, I guess, that I always explain that is that I've got an inherent underlying belief that doesn't matter what's going to happen, I can problem solve it. Doesn't matter how bad it gets, I can problem solve it. And I guess because I have that belief, not that I'm amazing, but that I can fix something, that I have that skill to problem solve, I'm okay with things going wrong. And therefore, it's easier for me to take a step, do something new. And I think that that's something that a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah. I think that mindset resonates with me a lot. I think because I went into my business, I was 23 years old. I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew that I could work hard enough or navigate solutions enough to fix most things. So what do we say then to the people sitting back watching this going, I actually don't think I'm a high achiever and I don't necessarily think I'm a high performer. And all of a sudden I've stumbled across renting out a business in a GP clinic and it's grown. And now I've got a couple of staff and I probably don't have the training in business. What, you know, how do you encourage somebody to be one or the other if they're innately not like that in their behavioral traits?
Well, I would be very interested to know what did they use to get them where they were right now, because there must be something in them, right? Some type of drive or some type of vision that has pushed them to get to that point. And I would want to unpack what that is that has allowed them to achieve it, even if they don't see themselves as either a high achiever or high performer. And that would be a very interesting discussion to have, and which I can't have with everybody that's on here. So I would encourage people to actually reflect on that and journal on that and going, if I can't see myself as either a high achiever, high performer, what is those skills, those strategies, those things, those beliefs that has driven me to achieve what I have achieved? And then again, ask yourself that question, how is these things serving me? Which are really serving me? Which has helped me? Because that's the stuff that we want to do more of, that you want to explore, that you want to grow and choose to continue on your pathway.
Yeah. And so talking about staff members and outsourcing, I mean, there's so many people out there that are time poor that want help. Let's say we do have those high achievers in our practice and those people who can certainly start walking up that career pathway. How do we take this in them and nurture that? Is it literally just as simple as just throwing them in the deep end and just letting them do it and give the ability to take it on? And the problem is more so that you're not allowing others to do it than their ability to want to do it?
Yeah, I mean, when I just started running my business, I did a lot of throwing in the deep end, just because I, as the practice owner, was so time poor. These days, I take a way more supported entry into the practice for any person, whether they new or they stepping up. So I'm definitely way more for supported entry, but also listening to the person, right? In terms of how quickly they are picking things up. A lot of people start a new role and they'll have all these amazing ideas and all of that type of stuff. And really, I think it's important not to have a one size fit all approach. Yes, you have to have your structured system. This is how we do onboarding and orientation and induction. But if people are moving faster through it, you don't want to rein that in, right? You want to encourage that, because I wouldn't want to be reined in if I was doing something that's really exciting and I have ideas and visions around it. And for others might want to go a bit slower, and that's okay too.
Yeah. And so what are your rules on recruiting? Have you got a common theme or a common rule when people say, when should I hire? What is there a magic number?
What, in terms of how many team? Or
yeah, I think I saw one of your posts. I think it was about the 80% mark you were saying, when you're at 80% capacity, rather than waiting until you're busting at the seams and waiting for an overflow to give somebody else. Is it the 80%?
Yeah. Well, these days I might need to adjust that. But yes, traditionally I would say when your diary is 80% full, i.e. there's still 20% of open appointments, you need to start recruiting. But especially in the psychology discipline, in our space, there is a huge demand for psychologists, very low supply. So right now it's taking people even longer to recruit. So I would say even at 60%, you need to start recruiting. And I know that's really scary to people when they go, oh my goodness, I got to start recruiting. And what if I get this person, I don't have enough clients to give them? It's actually really easy to do marketing in our industry. There's such a need and demand for clients to come in. I don't see marketing really as a problem. As long as you have a plan, you implement it, you can get clients fairly easily, especially for our psychologists in the mental health space. But it's much harder to get clinicians. And in terms of, general recruiting, I often see, people approaching recruitment in a very reactive manner, or passive, I should rather say a passive manner, where they write a job ad, they post it up on Seek, Indeed, or Psych Exchange in the psychology space, and then they sit back and wait, right? I see that as being very passive. I also look at all the adverts and I go, they all sound exactly the same, and it's all about the practice. So I truly believe that to recruit in the current market, every practice owner needs to be very clear on what I refer to as the brightness of future in your practice. That's your vision, your mission, your values, your practice manifesto, and be clear on who it is that you're looking for. And then really everybody should be rewriting, if they have not done it, their job ads to align with those things so they can attract the right people. Our job ads these days need to be more about that person than about us, because I always say, a psychologist can go and do counseling at any practice. Let's say you're on the Gold Coast, they can knock on any practice door, they can walk in because they are the psychologists, their skills is their strategies and stuff. So they can do that anywhere. Why should they do it at my practice or at your practice, right? What's in it for them? And it's really about them aligning with our vision, what we do, what we are here to do. I always talk about, they're getting on your private practice bus. We need to ensure that they know what the destination is that we're going towards. We want to only have people on the bus that we get along with, that's aligned, that is excited about getting to that destination. We can't stop talking about it. And therefore, to attract the right people, you need to put those in your ads, and then you need to share those ads on social media, everywhere that you can think of, and get as much reach, because we're looking for people that's our people, and that's not every second person out there in the marketplace.
I totally agree. There's such a shortage, and I hear about it in psychology all the time, but physio are getting few and far between, particularly manual therapist physios. Osteopaths, we've now got every 6-month outtake, but we were very, very restricted with our graduates that were coming out and the universities that were offering it. Chiropractors as well. So I think the whole of allied health has kind of hit that supply and demand battle. And so you do need to position yourself as a preferred employer, and you do need to be, if you're not front of mind, you're not being seen. So I couldn't agree with you with more. And the way that we engage the next generation of practitioners, and now whether I like it or not, whether I still feel like I'm young at heart, some of the new practitioners coming into our clinic are half of my age. So you do need to be able to relate to them on a personal level. You don't just want to be a boss, you know, you want to be a little bit more of a democratic type style team where everyone has a little bit more of a voice. I think gone are the times where we used to have this management roll down from top to bottom. I think things are a lot more inclusive now, and staff and teams genuinely want to feel a part of something, I think. And yeah, you're right. I think you have to project your ad as your personality for the clinic rather than just text and copy on a piece of paper. Definitely. Yeah. So where are you now? I've been watching people walk back and forth. You're at a seminar up there, are you, on the Gold Coast?
Yes, I am at a conference. Today's the last day, so I'm going to go back and join them now for the last couple of hours. And then I fly back to Bundaberg, and then from there I drive to Agneswater tomorrow.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for that. It was an amazing exercise to be able to break it down. I've actually never seen it done so strategically like that, to actually make you think. And I whilst I was sitting there thinking, oh gosh, I'd like to think of myself as a high performer, I certainly do default back into high achiever mode, which for me, I know over the last 2 decades is not the most productive place I can be in. So it's a good reflection whether you're 2 years in practice or whether you're 20 years in practice. I think we need to really have that self-awareness of where we are, where we sit, and then what brings out the best in us, and be able to champion those wins. So if people want to hear more from you, Gerda, where do we find you? Where can we find your courses?
Easiest place is just to go to the website, which is literally my name and surname, gerdamuller.com.au. Of course, I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, but the website that has everything that you might want to ask and check out.
Yeah, and look, it is a really stepping stone. I think self-reflection is the first place to start in emotional intelligence, which is what I love and what I love building on, which I am really excited to be discussing with your team in the next couple of months. But I think, yeah, absolutely. There's so many people out there doing things better than ourselves that we can learn from, and even just having those conversations and reflecting with those networking groups that come with some of these courses. I think not only with your wealth of knowledge, Gerda, not to take away from that, but to be surrounded by other fellow business owners and reap the rewards of those conversations of people experiencing what you are going through yourself in real time. There's so much value in that as well. So thank you very much. Thank you for putting that all together. I've had a lot to do with you offline, and it's wonderful to introduce you to the DRX community, many who know you already, but also for those who don't, I'm sure that they have many more questions to come for you in the future, and we'll be able to come back to this webinar time and time again when they've got to ask their questions or recruiting other people. So thank you so much. I'll let you get back to your conference. Thank you for giving up your time, and we'll chat to you soon. Bye.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Bye.